I'll start with The Many Saints of Newark.
I heard that was terrible.
So I watched that, and Punch Mom had it a lot. She finished it much more recently, so she could get the references that I wouldn't remember from watching it some years ago. But yeah, the Sopranos movie dropped and came out, and yeah, I heard some bad things initially, and then I was like, let me just fucking sit down and do this. And here's what it is, right? It feels like the best thing it does is shows you young versions of characters you're familiar with, and you can go, oh, yeah, okay, that's cool, yeah, okay, I see that, right? It's a whole lot of that energy. And then there's one of them that's like, okay, yes, you're doing it, you're being the young version of this guy, this character, but you're doing like an SNL impression of the guy, right? So
of his dad, right?
No. So like the entire
okay.
So the Sopranos cast, you know, all the fucking mobsters and shit, you see them all like in their younger forms and shit. But there's one guy, Sil, who's a really he's got a very stone face, and he's very just you know, he's got this kind of like exaggerated attitude about him. And like the young guy who's playing him is doing an SNL style impression of what the original actor did.
As a younger man.
As a younger man. So it doesn't read... Imagine if you were like, yeah, I'm doing young Christopher Walken or young Morgan Freeman. And you're like, young Morgan Freeman wouldn't sound like old Morgan Freeman, but old Morgan Freeman is what we know.
This is really funny because what you're describing is what I actually see when I look at the regular Sopranos.
Okay.
That's how I feel when I look at that stuff. I'm like, oh god, this is so ugh.
And it's not, it's like, when I say an SNL impression, it's like, no, he's nailing it. He's doing Sil, but he's doing old man Sil as a young man, you know, as opposed to like what a younger Sil might sound like. And that's, you know what it is? Here it is, right? If someone's doing Al Pacino and they're like, I'm gonna be young Al Pacino, so they're like, now I'm in high school going, hey, it's Al! How's it going, everybody? And it's like, no, that's not, you go back and you watch Godfather, and it's like, no, he was a quiet spoken guy, he kind of spoke a little like this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, business, whatever, you know?
Yeah, right.
And that's the thing, you know, you see how that goes. If you want to
play younger, you have to extrapolate back from the first to the younger to what you would imagine would be even younger.
Yeah, so it came across as like accurate but weird, you know, in that case. But anyway, so that's what its strengths are is just like, okay, you got the young version of these characters. Then you have like the actual story as a like prequel to The Sopranos, and it's not directed or written in a way that feels like a Sopranos episode. It's written as its own separate thing, almost like a mobster movie that's supposed to be standalone, but it relies on all these tie-ins. But it doesn't feel like a Sopranos episode. So, like, if you're going in looking for that kind of feeling, you're not getting it at all. You're getting a completely different...
You're like, who is that? Why did he do that? Because it assumes you watch The Sopranos?
It definitely, like, needs you to have watched it to really appreciate it. Otherwise, you're not going to be too connected to what the characters are doing that much. You're just following it like a mid-mobster movie, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And then as a standalone mobster movie, it's mid. It's not that great, you know? It's like okay at parts, but then some things that are... Like, for the most part, it carries through, and you can see stuff where they're like, okay, we want to do a little bit of a... It's like poetry, it rhymes. You know, so in the end, you're like, all right, I see how things go here. But I have to say, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'll just talk around. But like, the last shot of the movie just fucking sucks so hard and brings the whole thing down so badly that you walk away going, I can't believe. Like the final shot of this fucking movie is like it might as well just have the subtitle that says, "And from that day, that's how we became the Sopranos." Ah, you know, like it's so fucking unbelievably corn dog. It's, and you know, like you practically you're almost looking up at the sky, looking for fucking Mufasa's looking down on you and winking. You know, it's so hacky and corny. Terrible, terrible ending. And I, you know, if it didn't have that, you would have been like, yeah, all right, you know, sure. And I can still say, yeah, all right, sure.
Yeah.
You know, there's a character that it focuses on that's, yeah, the father of Chris Moltisanti. It focuses on Dickie. And, you know, it's interesting to see this guy come in and, you know, play, like, an instrumental role in the way things are set up before the series starts. And that's all fine. And following that story is all good, you know? But, Jesus Christ, one of the worst final shots I have ever seen in anything I've ever watched. Abysmally bad. You know, but
that's
if you,
not what I expected out of hearing. I thought you were gonna be like, yeah, the acting is weird and the story is like it can't do anything really crazy dramatic because you know who's gonna live or whatever. I didn't expect to be like, and then all the light touches will be the Sopranos.
Yeah, like Sega to Sanshiro in the sky, looking down from above. You know, like unbelievable. But no, I mean there's stuff that it does that I thought was interesting. Like the grandma from The Sopranos is just a like really crotchety, terrible old woman.
Isn't she like a CGI nightmare?
No. Only for the last scene because she had already.
Okay.
So she passed away before they got to finish filming, like that season, and basically they had to have her final scene. They had to CGI because you know she had passed away, and they didn't have a final, like you know whatever wrap up for the character. So they just had to figure out something, and they kind of, yeah, there's a really awkward shot of her sitting, you know, with her head pasted that looks very strange, but, and they used some previous dialogue, and it was just like, all right, well, you know,
that seems like something they just shouldn't have done.
Seems like it. And, you know, I mean, whatever, like, they basically, like, she passes away randomly and suddenly, and as you do, but like they wanted to get one final like interaction with her and Tony before they did that, and you know, so they kind of went for it. But yeah, the actual, but everything before that, she's great. She's just the definition of a fucking crotchety old battle axe that's just like sinister and evil, you know. And the young version of her, like, they do a great job establishing her as, like, just that shitty, all attention, all eyes on me kind of mother. But what they do is, like, she, in her youth, she has a resemblance to Tony's wife in the show, Carmela. She's got the same kind of accent and the same kind of look and features and attitude. So you're able to see, like, oh, Tony kind of married his mom in her younger years, but in her older years,
that happens.
You couldn't really tell, you know. It's a really interesting like thing to go like, oh yeah, let's play the younger version of her as almost like a fusion between the grandma you know and his wife. So that was really interesting, you know. And yeah, no, some other stuff that's like fun to see, you know, if you're like looking for references to the old series and stuff. Tons of nods and whatnot, but
does it have a part where I'm gonna try really hard. Does it have a part where young Soprano man,
young Soprano,
young Gandalf Soprano is chatting with a guy in a park, and then he sees something far away, and he has to run away, and then he falls down a snowbank.
There is a very similar scene.
Are you serious? I can't believe it.
It's
That's
where
literally all I know about The Sopranos.
yeah, where he's talking to Johnny Sack. And then, like, they're having a conversation, and he just suddenly sees the cops in the distance and fucking just books it. Yeah, that is a. There's actually a flashback where you see young Tony watching his dad do that, and the cops show up and fucking grab everybody, and someone tries to run for it, and he gets shot in the ass. So that is literally a thing.
That's great. I'm glad that the Soprano movie could somehow live up to my incredibly specific, unknowing expectation.
Mm-hmm. And they actually they actually shot that in the original show too, and then remade it for the movie. So yeah. Anyway, there you go. That's all there is to say about it. Is like, if you're a Sopranos fan, like, watch it to see all the connections and to see the, like, oh, it's the young version of that guy or the young version of this guy, and you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I can see it, you know. And that part's enjoyable. And then just don't expect it to be an episode or to feel like an episode. David Chase didn't direct it, so it doesn't at all feel like that. And for what it does feel like as a standalone thing, it's a mid-mobster movie with an absolute garbage ending.
I gotta say, even from a distance, as somebody who doesn't know anything about it other than the show is beloved, and the fact that it ends kind of weird, like, I'm familiar with the nature of its ending, and it's a little weird. I thought that, like, making a weird prequel thing seemed odd, or, like, I don't want to say pointless, because, like, I wouldn't know, but it just seemed like a really weird way to take that. Like, whereas I would look at Breaking Bad, and, like, having a series about Saul's adventures makes perfect sense to me, because that character rules.
Okay, but Better Call Saul is not the analog for this. El Camino is the analog for this. Did you watch El Camino?
No, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
That's the Jesse Pinkman movie that takes place after Breaking Bad.
Oh wow! Oh, that's also stupid.
Because Better Call Saul has multiple seasons of its own thing going on.
Yeah.
But, like, this is like that, where it's like, no, we're getting a full-on Jesse Pinkman story, you know?
That's stupid.
Well, in the end, I'll say this, like, El Camino, it did kind of feel unnecessary, but at the same time, it did feel like an episode. It did feel like you were watching the same show. It was, you know, things kind of came together in a similar-ish way, from what I remember, at least, you know, and I was like, yeah, I can understand, you know, what you're going for here, but it does give you some closure that, you know, you could have said didn't exist in the original show. So the demand for some closure where there wasn't any is a reason to go back and revisit, you know, the world. In this case, Sopranos doesn't give you closure, but thus gives you the best possible closure, in my opinion. But you didn't really have to go back. I'm feeling as if the impetus for it really must have just been that his kid got to that age where they're like, hey, yo, you look kind of like him. You look like your dad. We can do something with this. Reminiscent of when Tarantino was like, we got to wait for that girl to grow up so that we can do Kill Bill Volume 4, where she comes back and she's getting revenge on the bride, the daughter of Vivica Fox, you know?
Didn't that just not happen?
No, of course it didn't.
Yeah.
It totally, no, nothing, no, never. That's
Good
another
plan.
one of those.
Excellent plan where you have this long-form plan for a movie and then you just don't do it. That's that's a good way to do it. Yeah, good one.
So, you know, but it kind of reminds me of that in terms of, like, there was somebody who, like, was the right age to do the project that we want to do now, so we did it. And they also brought in Punisher, Walking Dead man, John Bernthal.
Oh, John Bernthal?
Yeah, they brought him in.
I like John Bernthal.
Yeah, he came into to play Tony's dad. So,
oh yeah, okay.
You know,
Okay.
you could see that. Yeah, in the end, you know, like I said, if you're a fan of The Sopranos, I feel like it's like, yeah, watch it to get the little nods here and there and the extra little juice. But if you're not a fan of The Sopranos, or you just are looking for like, hey, I just want to see a mobster movie, don't even look.
Let me ask you a question.
Don't even gabagool.
Is the movie about how we're all criminals, but we're family?
At the end of the day, Weez is the Sopranos.
I dude, like, as it's a weird state because I've watched tons of mobster movies with my dad because he watches a bunch of them. I fucking hate them so much.
Okay,
and
I love
like
them.
it might be my most misunderstood genre ever.
Yeah,
and the way that I always go to it is I saw Goodfellas and I saw Casino. And I was like, Joe Pesci is literally playing the exact same character in both movies.
He's pretty close.
What is this genre?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
Yeah. Which is why he gets to do something completely different for The Irishman. But no, to answer your question, not at all. That's not the thesis statement. You're thinking of Fast and the Furious.
Oh yeah, I guess I am. I guess it is.
You know, at the end of the day, that's where it's all about fanboy. But but no, Sopranos is not about fanboy at all. If Sopranos is about Sopranos is about bad men feeling bad about doing bad things and needing someone to talk to.
Okay.
That's what they actually drop as the leitmotif. You know. Yeah, that's Many Saints of Newark. Oh, also
Oh, yeah, I want to point out, because I see a lot of people pointing out that I'm a huge fan of the Yakuza series, and I hate Italian crime movies. The reason why I love the Yakuza series is for stuff like rubber bullets and secret Koreans, not any of the internalized Yakuza crime family shit. That stuff's stupid.
I almost forgot to mention that it takes place during the Newark race riots back in the day, 67.
Wait, Newark had race riots?
It sure did.
With the Italians?
With the black people.
Okay.
And there was a whole thing that went down, and at some point the National Guard came in and people got shot. It was a super crazy fucked up time. So it takes place right in the middle of that kind of chaos. And some of the setup for that, they also, like, again, they did reference it in the show as well, and like they have a bunch of stuff from the past, or they're like, they reference the fact that they used to work with like black gangsters and shit. So you get to see some of that in this, though it is interesting in that, like, they're working with, like, you know, some like a black dude and like a black street crew, and they're involved in doing their own sort of thing, and they have a little subplot, but like they do not like the people who are working with them, you know, based on every other mob movie, how people would refer to these black gangsters at the time. Yes. Whether they were or were not around. And this was a very inaccurate depiction.
Oh, really? Like, they're nice?
They're definitely not dropping it as much as you'd expect, except for when one of them does something that really, really bothers the other guy. Then he gets real mad at that. You know, he crosses a line, so to speak, that you should never cross by, you know, hooking up with a white lady, God forbid. But that's when the N-bombs get dropped. But
yeah, we can't have any of that.
Yeah, but prior to that, I'm just like, oh, there's gonna be like 8 of them flying in this scene, right? Where like he walks in and they talk a little guff, and it's like, no, they're keeping it kind of polite and civil, and I'm like, huh.
1960s gangsters, Italian American gangsters from New Jersey, well known for their class.
Yeah,
and
not
candor.
They did make a Sicily reference, but it wasn't full-on True Romance, you know?
Now, to be fair, this was prior to the invention of the gamer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that might have had an effect.
Also, if anyone's a fan, Joey Diaz is in it, and he gets to sit there and be his old grumbly self. And you're like, yep, that's Uncle Joey right there. So... and he says, yeah, exactly. Instead of saying Sicily, he says, "Oh, Sicilian. I'm Sicilian," is the way he says it. You know. So, anyway, yeah, Many Saints in Newark.